Hello, my name is Matthew Pfeiffer with MattPfeifferCoaching.com. Welcome to my YouTube channel. On this channel, I create videos and content about toxic, narcissistically abusive relationships. And if you have a question that you would like for me to answer, make sure you send it to justaskmatt at MattPfeifferCoaching.com. Again, that is justaskmatt at MattPfeifferCoaching.com. Just make sure you keep that email 2 to 3 paragraphs max. And you're also very direct and to the point of what your question actually is. If it's too long, if it's too lengthy, unfortunately, I will not be able to answer it. The fastest way to work with me, though, is to connect with me down below in a paid one-on-one coaching session. Also, make sure you hit the subscribe notification and the bell notification so you are notified each and every time I upload a new video. I upload new videos on this channel 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. And with all that being said, let's get into today's video. Today's video comes from a person who is still in a relationship with a narcissist and is trying to kind of piece things together, trying to figure things out, and trying to do their best job to keep the peace while they come up with an exit strategy. So with that being said, let's get into today's email. So the email reads, "Hello, I am currently in a marriage of 14 years and I am working through the beginning process of leaving. We have 2 children, 13 and 8, and they have the whole life built together, houses, cars, joint financial, not to mention immigrated him and his mother here. Yes, he got me hook, line, and sinker." And so this is very common. It's natural for marriages to have a lot of ties together, a lot of enmeshment, houses, cars, things of that nature. But one of the things that happens when you're in a toxic relationship is that those things become weapons. They're used as weapons and they're used as forms of control, in particular, the finances. So that's more than likely what she's alluding to here. Let's continue with this email. "I have been researching and learning everything I know about narcissists, and as this was all new to me just over a month ago. I've tried to learn a whole lot of any and everything I can about cluster B personality disorders, hence how I found you. It's invigorating to be able to share that I finally found the sanity I've desperately been searching for now that I can see through the fog my spouse has created with all of the manipulative and abusive behavior. I understand that I'm learning about myself and how I allowed him to manipulate me as well. It takes 2 to tango." So one of the things I want to say here, because I know that phrase right there, it takes 2 to tango, and that she's saying that she allowed for him to manipulate. Want to be very, very careful here because that's very triggering for a lot of people, because a lot of times people talk about victim blaming. One of the things, and if you've ever been a part of any of my lives that I do, whether it's on here on YouTube or on TikTok, you know that I talk about taking responsibility, taking ownership. And even though the bad behavior, the manipulation is not your fault, we do have to understand it's not so much that you allowed him to, it's that there were red flags that you saw, and you may not have developed the muscles, so to speak, the self-love muscles, the boundaries, so to speak, and you didn't know what to do with the information that you had. So it's not so much that you allowed it, but you did recognize it, right? We saw it, right? And we allowed it to happen because we weren't sure of what to do because of the false promises, because we had an expectation that things would turn around, right? So I want to be very careful here, and it's okay. We can learn from it, right? We can grow from it, and eventually that's going to be a part of your healing process. But I wanted to make sure that we were clear right there. So this email continues. "I wanted to send this question in the hope you might be able to provide some specific resources. I say specific because there seems to be a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of stuff out there, and not all of it is good information. However, as I'm sure you can understand during this process, I do find it hard to know what and who to trust." So I'm going to talk about that briefly because, yes, there is a lot of information out there. And once you find a person that you can trust, and let me be clear about something. One of the ways that you can know whether or not you can trust a coach or even a therapist, for that matter, is that they're providing a lot of resources. One of the big red flags when it comes to coaches or therapists is when they make it seem or make it feel like they are the only person who knows everything about that subject. They should be able to, and they should be doing this anyway, providing multiple resources. One of the things, if you go to the link in my bio, you notice that there are a shit ton of resources, lots of books, lots of other resources. Quite often I have, with my podcast, I have different guests, different other people. If you're a part of my membership, you can speak to those guests. There's a lot of transparency in terms of other people that you can work with. I've referred people I've worked with to other people. Because one of the things that you have to understand is that not everyone is going to be great or gifted in certain areas, and you're not going to work well with everyone. So you're doing the right thing by asking for additional resources, and we're going to get to that here in a second. But I want to make sure that we're clear about ways that people can tell whether or not a coach is a good, healthy coach or a good, healthy therapist versus ones that are not. This email also continues. Basically, the area of my trauma bond that I struggle with the most is not knowing how he will respond and wanting to do whatever I can to keep the peace. Do I assume the worst, knowing that it could set him off into a rage, or do I assume that I could talk to him reasonably and risk that he might rage regardless? I know I'm not responsible for his reaction. I just want to try and avoid as much conflict for my kid's sake as possible. So I'm going to pause here and I'm going to break this down before we continue with this email. This is a common mistake that people make when it comes to dealing with a toxic or narcissistic person. There's this assumption that there's the good person and then there's the bad person. That when they're being nice, that they're reasonable and that you can talk to them. And this is what a large part of the reason why people have stayed in the relationship longer than what they probably should have, because they still see the good in them, is what a lot of people say. And a lot of people will describe the narcissist as Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, right? Some days are really good, some days are really bad. That's not true. They are one and the same. They are the same person. So what I mean by that is that the good that you see is really the bad in disguise. The bad behavior can't happen without good times. It doesn't happen. Manipulation, control, and abuse cannot happen without good times in between, without someone behaving themselves and treating you with some level of respect. Here's what I mean. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. This is the reason why we tell our kids, do not take candy from strangers. Why? Because as adults, we know that the good that they're presenting in the beginning is really the bad in disguise. It's the bait before the hook. So one of the things that you're going to have to do is that you're going to have to let go of this, assume that he's going to be reasonable to talk to. Because even if he's reasonable to talk to in one moment, there's no telling of when, not if, but when that moment will flip. And not only when it will flip, but that he will use everything that you just said as a weapon against you. So let's talk about those good times, right, that you're expecting from him. That is why do they provide the good times in the beginning, or even throughout the relationship sometimes, is to allow for your guard to come down. Then guess what? Then the bad times come. So what your expectation should be that this person is unpredictable. That at any point in time, this person can go off. There is no good, right, so to speak. The good that you see is really just the bad in disguise, that whatever you're talking about in that moment at any point in time could be used as a weapon against you, either in that moment or later on down the road. So this email continues. Also, what resources are out there to help on how I can help protect my children without causing them more harm than good by getting them out of the toxic environment? I'm worried on how to handle my emotions and stress when dealing with all of the change of divorce, co-parenting, and the whole legal system, and especially the part that I feel could hurt me more than leaving my marriage is hurting my children that they blame me for hurting them slash their father. Thank you for your time and all that you do to bring awareness and clear answers to all of us who need help. So when it comes to the kids, so let me give you a couple of resources. So number one, I have a whole course on co-parenting, divorce. All of that is linked down below, and also on emotional triggers. I would recommend that one as well. So emotional triggers and the co-parenting one. Some other resources that I would recommend is, if you go to the link in my bio again, I have a couple of books in there on explaining divorce to children, number one, but also 2 books I would highly recommend are Conscious Parenting and The Awakened Family. Both of them are by Dr. Shafali. Those are linked in my bio as well. So here's the thing about it. Your kids probably already know, right? They already know that this is an unhealthy relationship. And one of the things that we have to understand is that a lot of times parents want to provide the perfect life for their kids. And because of our own internal validation, because of our own lack of validation, we think that if they're hurt, if their feelings are hurt, or if they're not happy at that moment in time, that means that we are a bad parent. That's not true, right? Our responsibility as parents is actually not to keep our children happy all the time. Our responsibility as parents is to keep them safe and to teach them how to manage all of their emotions, not just the good ones, not just the happy ones, how to manage all of them, right? So even if they were hurt through this process, it's not the end of the world, right? It's a part of life, and we teach them how to deal with all of life. Even the parts of life that might be a little bit low and might be disappointing. And I know a lot of parents will say, because I kind of hear some elements of this through in your email, that because you still need to heal, you feel like you can't be a good parent to them. You healing, them watching, and you modeling the behavior for them is going to be one of the biggest gifts that you can give to them. They need to see what it looks like, because they're going to go through their issues too, right? As adults, I'm not saying they're going to go through a divorce necessarily, right? They could, right? But what they need to see is, what does it look like when a parent, when one of my parents takes responsibility for their own emotions, for their own trauma, and what does that healing process look like? And that's going to be very inspirational to them, and it's actually going to help them, and it's going to help them. One of the things that parents struggle with, a lot of times parents feel like they need to be perfect all the time. That actually causes more harm than good. Your child needs to see you being okay with yourself, self-acceptance, and being able to acknowledge mistakes, right? And that takes a lot of the pressure off of them to need to be perfect as well. So thank you very much for writing in. Anyone else who would like for me to answer a question, make sure you send it to justaskmatt@mattpfeiffercoaching.com. Again, that is justaskmatt@mattpfeiffercoaching.com. Make sure you keep the email 2 to 3 paragraphs max, and you're also very direct and to the point of what your question actually is. Also, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell notification as well. Thank you guys very much, and I will see you in the next video.